Orcs and elves and fairies, oh my. Bright is the latest Netflix film starring Will Smith in a world where fairy tales exist. Things like orcs, elves, and fairies are mostly focused on in this movie, though I'm not sure if there's anything more than that overall. So Will Smith and Joel Edgerton star as two policemen, one human and one orc, as they investigate some truly bizarre cases that are going on, mostly because it's fairy tale stuff. When they find an elf and a magic wand, pretty much everyone starts coming after them, willing to kill for that magic wand that'll basically grant them anything they wish. The only people that can control the wand are Brights, and most of those aren't human. Though there are human Brights, and the only way you can find out if you're a Bright is if you hold the magic wand in your bare hand. You got a 50-50 shot. Either you're a Bright or you're gonna explode and die. So a lot of people are not really digging this movie. They're saying the first ever Netflix blockbuster movie is failing miserably. First of all, I'm not entirely sure how you consider this a blockbuster. Is it just because Will Smith's in it? To me, it was just felt like another Netflix movie that so happened to have Will Smith in it. Yes, it has certain elements that feel a little bit more like a blockbuster, not only Will Smith. There are also interesting visuals that are accompanying the movie that feel more blockbuster-esque. Starting off with the people category, the acting itself had its moments here and there, but for the most part, I think you can say that the movie mostly just felt like it should. It felt as you would expect from an action blockbuster. There are some emotions here and there, but I wouldn't really say the acting was the greatest. I will just say 1 out of 2 possible stars. Characters, I think they probably wanted to focus more on the characters in this movie, but I don't think they quite made it as memorable as they wanted to. I think for the most part, when people think of this movie, they're not going to be thinking about the two cops, the human and the orc. I think for the most part, people are going to be thinking of, hey, there's that Will Smith Netflix movie. So you're remembering it more for the cast than you are anything else. 1 out of 2 possible stars. While I like Will Smith and I'm a bigger fan than probably most people are of him, he did okay here. But there is nothing screaming to me that he's the only person that could have been in the movie and other people could have been cast in the same character. Heck, the same could be said about Joel Edgerton. He's an orc and anybody could have been done. He does an okay job. It's just casting gets 1. Truly, I think everybody does play an important role in the movie. You got the elves, the orcs, the fairies, and each character seemingly has their own individual importance to the film. So I'm going to say 2 out of 2 possible stars there. I think they wanted to have chemistry, especially for the buddy cop scenario, and I think that part was just okay. I get what they were going for, but it never felt personable. I never connected with them on that kind of a level. So 1 out of 2 possible stars. Writing score. Dialogue, nothing snappy, nothing that really sticks out there. Unfortunately, I think Will Smith often has zingers that are memorable, but not here. 1 out of 2 possible stars. It has an okay balance. It's not super great at that because it does have a little bit too many characters coming after them, and it's a struggle to kind of remember who everybody is and who the good elves are, who the bad elves are. It's a little bit of a struggle in that regards, so I'm going to give that 1 out of 2 possible stars. I can't really say there's much of a great story here. It tries to be fun because it's a fairy tale in modern day, as if fairy tales actually existed. There's not much to it. There's really not. So for that, I'm going to have to say 1 out of 2 possible stars. Originality, can I really say that taking fairy tales seriously is original? No, we've seen that in a bunch of TV shows specifically, and that's basically the concept of Shrek. There's nothing in this that felt super original. Some things, yes, but for the most part, no. 1 out of 2 possible stars. Interesting? Yeah, I think Netflix did a good job at making a trailer that looked interesting. Will Smith beating a fairy to death, which was funny. When I was watching, regardless of how good or bad it was interesting, and I did want to see how it ended up. 2 out of 2 possible stars for that. BTS score. While I do think some of the visuals were pretty fantastic in certain elements of the movie, there's not a whole lot of focus on it, and instead it wants to focus a little bit more on personable things, the characters, which I don't think it had the greatest strength on. It should have focused more on the visuals than it actually did. So because of that, I'm only going to give visuals 1 out of 2 possible stars. Nothing pops out for the director. Anybody could have really done it. So 1 out of 2 possible stars. The same can basically be said about the editing. I could have edited together the movie ultimately. 1 out of 2 possible stars. It was as advertised as I expected. 2 out of 2 possible stars. Nothing really stands out for the music unless you want to consider the orcish music, the screamo orcish music, something that sticks out. No, I'm going to say 1. Narrative arc score. As usual, the narrative arc did pretty good. The introduction got us acquainted with who Will Smith is, who his partner is, conflicting things they have against each other, but ultimately that's what you normally get with that. Inciting incident is ultimately when they come up to the house that has the magic wand, which is ultimately when the crap hits the fan. The obstacles are pretty much trying to survive the night. Climax is a culmination of everything else that feels pretty good. Falling action returns to a new norm after calming down, so overall, I'd have to give all of these full points and say 10 out of 10 possible stars. Entertainment score. I can't say that I was super entertained with the movie, honestly. When it comes down to rewatchability, because it's so easily accessible on Netflix, I probably would consider this rewatchable. Other than that, I don't really consider it something I gotta see again, so 1 out of 2 possible stars. Do I consider it fun? Absolutely, certain elements are definitely fun, but at the same time, there are boring and confusing things that make the movie feel a little bit longer than it ultimately is. 1 out of 2 possible stars. Do I have an impulse to buy it? Obviously, Netflix does release certain titles on DVD and Blu-ray. I don't really want to buy it or own it. Technically, by having Netflix, I own it already. But I'm going to just say 0 for that. Do I have an impulse to talk about it other than this review? Not really. I think I covered it. 0. Suck anybody in. I think for the moments with the magic wand, those are pretty cool parts that will suck an audience in. But for the most part, everything else just feels average, typical, almost forgettable in a sense, so sucking in gets 1 out of 2 possible stars. Specialty. As a Will Smith movie, I don't think a lot of people are going to go into the movie thinking this is the greatest Will Smith movie in the world. He's done a ton of blockbusters, and it's hard not to list those off as his better films. For that, I'm going to have to give Will Smith 5 out of 10 possible stars. As an action film, I do think there's a ton of action that is almost surprising in some regards. Definitely an action movie, 10 out of 10 possible stars. As a fantasy film, the movie is fantasy. I don't know how else to put it. 10 out of 10 possible stars. As a Netflix film, they have a lot of movies now. While their TV shows are always the greatest, their movies seem to lack in a way. And this also lacked in a way. And I have to say that I have seen better from Netflix. I've also seen worse from Netflix, but I have seen better, and there are movies from Netflix that I honestly enjoyed a lot better than this. So for that, I'm just going to have to give it 5 out of 10 possible stars. For halfway decent, I think for the most part, probably, but I don't think they did what they ultimately wanted to do. I think they had focus where they shouldn't have had, and had a lack of focus on other parts that ultimately didn't feel as fluid as they probably wanted it to be for their target audience and for the movie they ultimately wanted to make. For that, I'm going to have to get half points and say 5 out of 10 possible stars. There are things in the movie that feel like it's focusing on racial inequality, especially with the orc and everything, but again, we have seen movies like this, and if they had just played their cards right, and just did that right, the movie would have been a lot better than it ultimately is. Instead, it's just an okay movie in my opinion. Guys, tell me what you thought about Bright in the comments down below, and follow me on Trek.tv at username IMDWG, as well as Twitter IMDWG. And for YouTube, you know you can subscribe to me, hit that like button, and hit that bell to be notified when I come out with my next movie review, which will be coming out next week on Tuesday, as I am observing, New Year's with my family. And on Tuesday, we are going to be starting with Jeepers Creepers 3 before talking about Jeepers Creepers 2, because that's the sequential order of the movies. So Jeepers Creepers 3 on Tuesday, and until then guys, peace out and have a good weekend.